name is Cameron Cathcart. Because of the COVID pandemic and health authority restrictions, our program this year will be a great deal shorter than usual, but no less significant, and will include many traditional components. To ensure safety protocols, we have asked the public to stay away from Victory Square this morning and encourage them to remain at home and watch the ceremony on television or live streaming. Here at Victory Square, we have limited attendance within the cenotaph area to 50 persons, practicing physical distancing and wearing masks. There will be no parade of veterans, military units, bands, and cadets today, unfortunately. Only official wreaths will be placed at the cenotaph, and even the ceremonial vigil guard will be absent, all of which is unfortunate. But we must adhere to protocols and all remain safe. As is customary on Remembrance Day here at Victory Square, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We're also grateful to Global Television for their generosity by covering the ceremony today, providing it to CTV, and for viewing on live streaming, including the CBC, during this very difficult time. Thank you both on behalf of those watching at home. As we begin today's abbreviated ceremony, we thank the City of Vancouver as well for its generous support, particularly with the challenges faced by the ongoing pandemic. We remember and we are free. Simple words, heavy with significance. Because on this day, we remember those who served and the many who gave their lives in the service of our country in wars during the past century, which ensured our freedom and helped to build our country. This year, we mark the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, a war that raged right across Europe, on land and sea, and in the air, and throughout Asia, from 1939 to 1945. We Canadians are now engaged in another war, a new world war, caused by an insidious virus that is taking the lives of thousands, and like all wars, can often end in tragedy that results in sadness and grief. Therefore, it is important that we salute our frontline medical workers in the current war against coronavirus. Their dedication and courage to help others survive reflects the accomplishments of the past and the new generation of our veterans. Because of the COVID restrictions and distancing protocols that we must meet, the Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services Band and Battalion Chief Andrew Greenwood are located at a separate location today. Mr. Greenwood, who returns again this year, along with the band, are now ready to perform our national anthem. For those at home, please stand, if you're able, and join in the singing of O Canada.
In all of us
and the Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services Band. Each year, an original poem written by a Vancouver school student has been selected as the Poem of Remembrance for November 11th. This year, despite the pandemic restrictions, we continue that tradition that showcases our youth and their talents. Today, we welcome our poet, Iris Jang, a grade 11 student from Ideal Mini at Sir Winston Churchill High School. Iris's poem today is called To Remember. Iris?
To remember. Many were told in Flanders Field, a poem quite old and renowned, where tales of war the memories hold. What is to remember? Fighting for a hierarchy not our own. What is so important for soldiers to die alone? More important than millions of families torn. What is to remember? So much death, it becomes unaccountable. So high a number, it becomes unimaginable. So many left with stories unheard. So many names, it starts to blur. What is to remember? We claim to remember those who sacrificed, but not the cause why so many fight and died. To remember is not just names. To remember is not just stories. What is truly to be remembered? To remember is to show kindness for those who have fought and survived. To remember is to accept for those physically and mentally scarred. To remember not just tales of old, but to show kindness and acceptance to those with dark stories untold.
Thank you, Iris. Now, here to present Iris Jang with a certificate of appreciation for her contribution today is Mayor Kennedy Stewart of Vancouver. Mayor Stewart.
Thank you. I'm here today to present a certificate of appreciation to Iris Jang in recognition of your composition and reading of To Remember on the occasion of the 2020 Remembrance Day ceremony. I want to thank everyone for participating today and showing such respect.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I'd like to mention now that we're very grateful to the Vancouver Fire and Rescue Service, and in particular, firefighter Chris Coleman, for providing transportation today for Iris Jang and her dad. Thank you very much. We now return to our separate location to enjoy a performance by the Saraband Chamber Choir under the direction of Shane Rahman. They will sing Till We Meet Again, a nostalgic song made popular during the Second World War. And because all of us are experiencing the effects of isolation during the current COVID pandemic, this familiar song is an appropriate choice today. Here now is the Saraband Chamber Choir, directed by Shane Rahman, with Until We Meet Again.
Just for a while, dear, we must part. Don't
wonderful performance by the ceremony. They will return to perform again at the conclusion of today's abbreviated ceremony. Now, in the absence of a parade commander today, I'm going to take the opportunity to ask all of those attending to please come to attention and remove headdress for the prayer of remembrance. Here with the traditional prayer of remembrance is Chaplain the Reverend Kenneth Lowe of 39 Service Battalion.
This Remembrance Day marked the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. I would like to use this time to express our gratitude towards all veterans who sacrificed themselves for our country. Although we cannot meet with each other physically this year, I still want to say this in front of your TV or your computer monitor. Thank you for your service in the past, so that we can enjoy this land today free and safe. As we enter into the time of prayer, please honor this moment of quiet meditation as is your custom. Let us join in prayer. Let us pray. Merciful and compassionate God, we gather today in gratitude and thanksgiving for the men and women of our Canadian Armed Forces and our veterans who have served with such honor and sacrifice over many years and through many conflicts. They represent the very best of our country as they endure through the horrific experience of wars. May we ever be grateful for their selfless dedication and for their professionalism and commitment. May we never forget those who have given up so much for our country. We commend them in your hands, O God of hope. Grant eternal rest to the fallen, your everlasting comfort to those who mourn, your healing to all who suffer, and your strength to all who serve. O God, we ask your blessing upon this nation and upon his leader and people, that we may each be inspired to work together for a more just and peaceful world. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Captain Lowe. Please remain and replace headdress and stand easy. Remembrance Day is also being acknowledged with strict adherence to COVID protocols elsewhere in Vancouver today at the following locations: the Japanese-Canadian Monument in Stanley Park, the Royal Vancouver Yacht Club, the University of British Columbia, and the Chinese-Canadian Memorial starting at 12 noon. This year, we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II in 1945. In May of that year, the war ended in Europe with the unconditional surrender of German forces. This followed the liberation by the Western Allies of France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Scandinavia, while Russia moved in from the east, all leading to the eventual fall of Fortress Europe. In Asia, the eventual surrender of Japan in August 1945 took longer, and then only after the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, a weapon that paradoxically has left the world at greater risk of mutual destruction in the ensuing 75 years. Of the more than 1 million Canadians who volunteered during World War II, more than 45,000 died while serving in the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Merchant Navy before surrendering at the end of the war. Today, just over 26,000 Canadian veterans who survived the Second War are still with us. Of that number, approximately 5,900 are here in British Columbia. As they are dwindling quickly, we must be mindful of the debt that we owe them for the freedom we enjoy today. It is timely, therefore, to mention 3 BC veterans of the Second War, representing the Army, the Air Force, and Navy, who passed away this year. George Chow landed with the Canadian Army in Normandy shortly after D-Day. A week ago, George passed away at the age of 99, just 1 day short of his 100th birthday. We will miss him dearly. Harry Hardy was 98 when he died earlier this year. He was decorated RCAF pilot, flew over France and Belgium after D-Day. Harry Hardy flew 96 combat missions in a Typhoon fighter bomber and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Sidney Thrussell died this year at the age of 97. Born in Vancouver, Sidney was in the Merchant Navy during the Second War, serving on a variety of troop ships in the Pacific and other theaters of war at sea. Today, we proudly wear our poppies to keep the memories of these men alive and that of our former comrades, unless we forget. It hasn't been a peaceful world since the so-called Good War that ended. The Korean War broke out not long afterwards, coupled with the start of 30 years of the Cold War, then more conflict in the former Yugoslavia, and most recently, Afghanistan, which was Canada's longest. Our country was involved in all these, including peacekeeping. Today, Canadian troops are still serving in Latvia, Ukraine, and parts of the Middle East. And during the post-war period, the United Nations was born, as well as NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which developments helped to maintain peace up to a point. We salute our veterans and every generation for their service to Canada, wish them good health, particularly those who have suffered physical and mental injury, and thank those who care for them. But now, as we mentioned earlier, we're involved in a seemingly endless new war against the coronavirus. That means that, like all older people, elderly, vulnerable veterans are faced with a new enemy, not overseas this time, but here at home. As this war against COVID-19 began taking lives in Canada, the Canadian forces, as usual, stepped up. As the pandemic unfolded, they assisted in 30 long-term care facilities in Quebec and Ontario. Military medical teams were deployed, cared for patients, fulfilled their mission. Importantly, today's serving men and women always stand ready to assist their fellow citizens at home, dealing with forest fires or floods, and as we've just witnessed, caring for Canadians coping with the killer virus. We thank them for this valuable work. We must also be mindful that some of our new generation of veterans need our hand of care and compassion long after they've returned home. We need to avoid being judgmental, be supportive, and advocate on their behalf where and when we can. And when you do greet a veteran, please thank him or her for their service, and if possible, thank their families too. In the words of Shakespeare's Henry V, "We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, for he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother." We now approach the place in today's program where individual memories are rekindled to honor the sacrifice of so many Canadians during the wars of the past 100 years. Sound of last post signifies the end of World War I, followed by the lament. It's more important than ever to remember that have fallen this day and wearing the poppy, lest we forget. During 2 minutes of silence following the last post, we'd all reflect on the wartime losses of loved ones. After last post and 2 minutes of silence, the piping of lament will be heard. This is followed by a rouse, which completes the tribute. And then the annual flypast to the Aurora aircraft will occur. These flypasts take place every Remembrance Day to honor the memory of some 10,000 Canadian aircrew killed or missing. The last post and rouse will be sounded by bugler Bombardier Olivier Couturier of the 15th Field Band, Royal Canadian Artillery. 2 minutes of silence will follow the last post. The lament is then piped by Vern Kennedy, former pipe major with the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada. The sounding of rouse will follow that. And in the distance, you'll hear the big guns of the 15th Field Artillery Regiment firing the 21-gun salute from HMCS Discovery in Stanley Park. We now begin the placement of the official wreaths. Because of COVID pandemic restrictions and to adhere to health protocols, today's placement of official wreaths will be markedly different than previous years. Unlike traditional ceremonies, the wreath layers have already taken their positions, physically distanced around the cenotaph. Each representative is separated from the other by 2 meters, and those who accompany them are situated another 2 meters away, and all are wearing masks. The wreaths will be placed as the names of the organization or association and representatives are announced. During the placement of official wreaths, the band and the choir will perform an instrumental version and hum "Abide With Me." And there, right on cue, is the Aurora Long-Range Surveillance Aircraft 407 Squadron 19 Wing in Comox, making its annual appearance, piloted by Captain Colin Holobowicz. This flight honors the memory of lost and missing crews. The official wreath laying will now begin. On behalf of the Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia, Bob Underhill, Chair of the Vancouver Remembrance Day Committee, will lay the wreath. On behalf of the Honorable Janet Austin, Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia. For the veterans of the Royal Canadian Navy, King Juan, President, Naval Association of Canada. For the veterans of the Canadian Army, Josh Muir, Seaforth Association. For the veterans of the Royal Canadian Air Force, Ian Whiting, President, 801 Wing, RCAF Association. For the Government of Canada, the Honorable Harjit Sajjan, Minister of National Defence. He is accompanied by Major Greg McCullough. On behalf of the British Columbia Legislature, again, Mr. Bob Underhill, the Chair of the Vancouver Remembrance Day Committee, will lay the wreath. For the Consular Corps of British Columbia, Manuel Cacho Sousa, the Consul General of Peru and Dean of the Consular Corps. And just flying overhead was the so-called Poppy Flight, again an annual event at Remembrance Day over Victory Square. On behalf of the City of Vancouver, the wreath will be laid by Mayor Kennedy Stewart, who is accompanied by Assistant Fire Chief Siwa Pangalia and Vancouver Police Deputy Chief Lawrence Rankin. Representing the Army, Navy, and Air Force veterans in Canada, Mike MacDonald, Command President. For the Royal Canadian Legion, Valerie McGregor, President of the BC Yukon Command. For the serving members of the Canadian Forces, Major General Rob Roy McKenzie, Chief for Reserves and Employer Support. accompanied by Colonel Paul Ersick, Commanding Officer, 39 Canadian Brigade Group. For the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Assistant Commissioner Stephen Thatcher, Lower Mainland District Commander, and Staff Sergeant Major David Doanachan. On behalf of the Youth of Canada, the Girl Guides of Canada, represented by Sage Adams, and the Scouts Canada, represented by Ethan Russell. And finally, on behalf of the IODE, Carol York, Vice President, IODE, British Columbia. And during this year of uncertainty and hope, we are pleased to place a single white rose at the cenotaph to honor all veterans who are in care. Doing so is Sergeant Major Steve Kern. We wish all veterans in care happiness and good health. An unfortunate result of the restrictions caused by the pandemic and to comply with health regulations that limited audiences here at public gatherings, recognized wreaths will not be placed on the cenotaph this year. We are sympathetic and share this disappointment with those who each year place their own wreaths at the cenotaph or on behalf of organizations or groups to honor the fallen. We trust that you will understand. And now to conclude today's abbreviated Remembrance Day ceremony, soloist Andrew Greenwood is about to return with the Vancouver Fire and Rescue Service Band to sing God Save the Queen. Following this and through to the end of today's program, the wonderful Saraband Chamber Choir will perform In Flanders Fields, Abide With Me, and Until We Meet Again. Now, to bring today's ceremony to a close, here is Andrew Greenwood with God Save the Queen. In the words of the poet Lawrence Binion, they shall not grow old as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor do the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. This concludes the 2020 Remembrance Day ceremony from Victory Square in Vancouver. Thank you for attending by watching from home. Keep well, stay safe, and enjoy our freedom for the rest of your day.
age and decay. In all around I see. Oh, thou who changest not, abide with me. I fear no present, every passing hour. What but thy grace and for the tempter's power, who like thyself my guide and stay can be. Though cloud and sunshine blow abide with thee. Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the roses row on row, that mark our place, and in the silence still bravely singing cry, stands heard amidst the dancing road. We are the dead, short days ago we lived, felt on saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up the quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us, though dark, we shall not sleep. Though poppies grow in Flanders Let's say goodbye with a smile, dear, just for a while, dear, we must part. Don't know where, but I know we'll meet again some